It's Tuesday, and again, I bring you greetings from your church staff at Tucker First United Methodist Church. For this week, there are not really any new things that I want to mention, but just to give some updates on three things that you have already heard about. First of all, over the last week, we have had several people in our church family that have lost loved ones to death. Those names have gone out in emails, they have been in our prayers, and I would simply ask you to continue to remember the families of those individuals that have lost loved ones as we continue to pray about the COVID-19 issues. We want to keep in our prayers the people who have lost loved ones, and I think it's appropriate for us as a church family to do so. The second thing that I want to mention today involves something that you have heard about for a couple of weeks now. Last Thursday, we put out a church survey that has questions pertaining to issues of reopening for in-person worship. That survey did go out last Thursday, and in the first 3 or 4 days that it was out, a number of people from our church family did respond. We asked you to respond, and you responded. Thank you for sending that information in. And if you have not had a chance to complete that survey yet, I would ask you to please try to do so over the next couple of days. Our Health and Welfare Committee is going to be meeting this Thursday, and we will begin looking at the results of the surveys and include that in some of the planning that we do. And we want to hear from as many people as we can to have as accurate of information as we can in the plans that we make moving forward. Thank you for those that have filled out the survey. If you haven't and can, please take the time to do so. The other thing that I want to mention today involves one item that was in the announcement time of this past Sunday's worship video. We continue to hear about some of the things going on in Atlanta as well as other parts of our nation, some of the demonstrations that are going on. And I want to continue to invite you to be in prayer about all of the issues surrounding that. That definitely involves race relations that are going on in our country and working towards social justice. But I would ask you to please commit that to your prayers at this time. This past Sunday, there was an article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that really caught my attention, and I would recommend the article. It was written by Ambassador Andrew Young, formerly mayor of Atlanta, had an article there, and I thought he made some really good points in there, and I would recommend the article for everyone. You can go to the AJC website. There is an opinion section, and if you go to the opinion section and you don't see that article in the search engine, you can just type in Andrew Young's name and it should take you to the article. And without going into much detail, there were a few things in that article that really caught my attention. First of all, Ambassador Young in no way backs away from the issue of race relations and the injustices that have been a part of our society forever, dealing with that. But while dealing with some of those racial issues, he also brings in a second issue that is associated with the race issues, and these two things really go hand in hand. It's difficult to talk about one without the other, and yet Ambassador Young is one of the few people that talks about the second aspect of that very much. In dealing with the race issues, he also brings in some issues of poverty. And he connects those two things, and those two, race and racial issues, racial prejudice, injustices, are so interwoven with poverty issues that it's difficult to talk about one without the other. And I think he does a good job of highlighting both of those issues and some ways that they are interconnected. Without going into all the detail of his article, there were just a few things in there that caught my attention. He talked about the early years of the civil rights movement and things that he learned from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he said one of the things that he learned there from Dr. King was how important it is not to take your eye off the prize that you're ultimately working towards and not to allow distractions to move your focus away from the prize. And then he included what he sees as the prize that we're working towards, have been working toward, continue to work toward. And he identified that prize that we seek as being one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then immediately after that, he wrote, today that prize is being threatened in every aspect of our lives. But it's helpful for us to be reminded of what the prize is that we are working towards. A little bit later in his article, he wrote that we must find a way to live together and work together as brothers and sisters, and if not, then we will perish together as fools. It's a call for us to focus on being a time where it's critical that we show unity in working for issues of justice in our society. And then a little bit later in the article, he referenced Dr. King's comments early on in the civil rights movement and how appropriate those are now. When Dr. King had the opportunity to talk with the business leaders in Birmingham, one of the statements that he made there was, working together toward a community that is fair and just is an absolute necessity. And then he added, we can no longer tolerate our acceptance of the unjust relationship between us. It's a call for us to work together on some of the problems that we are facing in our world today. And not only does Ambassador Young bring up some of those issues in this article about the connections between racial injustice and poverty and the way that those are interconnected, but he also offers a hint of what he sees as being the ultimate solution that will guide us in this process. He returns to his roots as a minister of the gospel. And the last section in his article was a section entitled, I Still Believe in Miracles. And maybe we need a miracle right now as much as we need anything else in our world. And in that section, he had this focus that as we continue to strengthen our sense of justice, we also need to be in prayer for grace and mercy. And I hope that we don't ever neglect any one of those three. Social justice, mercy, and grace belong together, and they belong in our prayers at this time. And then at the very end of his article, he reiterated that statement that he still believes in miracles. And I want to share with you two of the sentences he wrote at the end of the article, talking back about the early years of the civil rights movement. He wrote, in the dark hours of Birmingham and St. Augustine and Selma, when we had done everything we knew how to do, we had no plan or idea where the future would lead us. Yet almost miraculously, the words of our ancestors singing in slavery came to us. The Lord will make a way somehow. And he did, and he will. Ambassador Young's comments are a reminder for us in the church community that we depend on God. I hope that we continue to sound our voices calling for justice in our communities, that we continue to be a people that call for mercy and grace, to be a part of this idea of unity, calling us all to work together. I believe that is what God is doing, what God wants to do. And I want to be a part of that, and I want to invite you to be a part of that as well. This is a time for us to show the unity that unites, a call for us to focus on greater justice in our society, a time for us to focus on what it means to be brothers and sisters together. I like Ambassador Young's focus that in our prayers, as we take stands for justice, let's also keep in our prayers the call for mercy and for grace as well. And if we do so, then my hope and my prayer is that God will indeed continue to make a way for us today, just as God has made a way in future generations or past generations with things they dealt with. Let's trust God and see how God can use us as the agents to bring about the change that is needed in our world today. As we continue to have updates, we will share those. Later this week, we'll be looking at the results of the surveys that we have, and then sometime in the near future, we will be sharing some information about when we anticipate that we are going to be able to come back together in person as a worshiping community. Until that time comes, God bless you and God keep you safe in these days as we work and pray for the things of God to be realized in our world.